Hello, everyone. I'm Nikki Haverstock. I was the October author, and I'm here with Tracy, who is the November author. So, Tracy is a USA Today bestselling author of humorous and murderously fun mystery series before plotting murders in Italy and New Orleans. She was an award-winning literary translator and lecturer of Italian at the University of Texas at Austin, where she earned a PhD in applied linguistics. It's just
Look
so
at me all.
fascinating.
Okay.
You gotta hook them.
Sorry. I have to
So
do
let's
that.
just let's just jump in with I know a little bit about your writing, but why don't you tell all the people at home, like what are your books like? If people don't know, how would you describe them?
I think an easier thing for me to do is sort of say how they've been described to me. So I write the Frankie Amato mysteries, and I have written in Gemma Halliday's Danger Cove series, and I also did a collaboration with, let's see, Leslie Langtree, Diana Orgain, and Arlene McFarlane. The Killer Foursome, I think, is what we were originally calling it. Anyway, long story short, I'm also working on a new series called Pasta and Piazza Mysteries. I'll talk about, but all of them. What's typically said to me is that, well, they're fun, they're funny, hilarious, whatever. You can guess that because they're comedy mysteries, but also, um, the place tends to be a character in the books. So, for example, Limoncello Yellow, which was the first Frankie Amato, the murder happens in a boutique. And in some ways, like, even though it's one of my favorite books in the series, I'm a little disappointed in myself because after that, I made sure that the settings were way more sort of creative and colorful and specific to New Orleans. So, for example, let's see. The fifth book five, Galliano Gold, was on a steamboat, and there's like,
Mm.
their steamboats are kind of a big thing on the Mississippi River in New Orleans in particular. Um, and I kind of just tried to pick places that were specific to the city, also in terms of the weird sort of subcultures of New Orleans. So whether it's partying on Bourbon Street or in Campari Crimson, for example, there's a group of people in New Orleans who live as vampires. And so that I did that, like, a kind of a Halloween vampire mystery for that. The controversial plantations of New Orleans. In my second book, Prosecco Pink, there's a plantation modeled after Oak Alley, super, super famous one, for all the wrong reasons. And just they're kind of explorations of places, but in a humorous way, and then how people sort of live in those interesting places, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah. When I think of your books, I also think a lot about like food and drink.
Yeah.
Is that something that's really
Okay.
important to you?
Well, I'm Italian American, so yes and yes. More so food, unfortunately. I wish it was a lot less important to me than it is. I've heard like a couple of readers have come, probably more than a couple. They're like, "Oh my God, Frankie sounds like an alcoholic because she drinks like at all." But the books, every one of those books in that series obviously is named after a wine or an Italian liqueur that somehow factors into the mystery. So, of course, drinks are a part of it, but it's not like people are drunk the entire books. Most people I know have drinks, and I like think I drink a couple of times a month. I know people are curious about that actually because they're like, wow, those books seem so focused on that. They're not. And that's not at all my focus. But it I think it will be more, food in particular will be more of a focus in the coming series, the Pasta and Piazza Mysteries, because the protagonist of that, who is actually Frankie's cousin, Giada, will be hosting food tours throughout cities in Italy. So the books will be, once again, kind of like the Frankie mysteries, in a sense that Each one will be in a different city in Italy. And so you'll get to see sort of some of the main sites and also the specific regional dishes that people eat there. Because one thing that some people know this about Italy, but a lot of people don't know, the food is very, very, very different from region to region. And I think the best story I can tell you about that, some years ago, I attended a conference in Italy, like related to academia, not books. And I stayed with some friends in Rome, and then I had to go up to Genova for the conference. And I came back to Rome, and the 18-year-old son of the people I was staying with said, "Did you eat pesto while you were there? Because Genova is where pesto originated." And I said, "No, I didn't get a chance to." And he was like, "Oh, good." He was like, "I don't know how people can eat that." And that is like sort of a sentiment of Rome and like that region and every region in Italy is like that. They have their own food. And so that series will really be involve a lot of that. The specific food of the region. Also, one funny thing about that, you guys, so I could tell you the first one, and I have a pre-order up for it. It's Capri, Cannoli, and Conspiracy. But the second one is Rome, Ravioli, and Revenge. And my Italian friends, the first thing they said was, people don't eat ravioli in Rome. Like, why would they? And so they were like, how are you going to explain that? And so that's what I mean. Like, when I say dramatically different food from region to region, that's what I'm talking about. Like, people in Rome would not eat ravioli. What my friend didn't know, though, is that in aristocratic Rome in like the 1700s, there was a recipe for ravioli, and it will be the basis of the book. But isn't that weird? Like that, I mean, it really is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And I have to know your research methodology. Like, you've been to all these places, you've eaten all this food,
Yeah.
do you get to write it off on your taxes? You're like, guess who's going
Yes to
back to
all that.
town?
Yes to all that. So I'm super lucky in the sense that I've been very, very fortunate. I realized this to be able to extensively travel in Italy. I don't even, I mean, I've maybe been 40 something times. I don't really
Mm,
know. And I've been all over. One of the reasons I've been all over, though, many years ago, a local private school actually asked me. I was friends with someone who taught there, and they were sending two different summer trips to Italy, and doing a tour, like a 3.5 week tour. I'm just so many places. And the parents were very nervous about it because none of the teachers, it was like Latin teachers doing it, and they didn't speak Italian. And so the parents were saying, they wouldn't sign up the kid unless there was somebody on the trip who was fluent in Italian in case of an emergency. And so I got to go a couple of times. And that was, I had traveled a lot in Italy on my own, like from north to south, even to islands, but this is where I really went some obscure places where there might be like an ancient Roman ruin, whatever. Like for whatever reason, we were all over the country, and in 3.5 weeks, and I got to do it twice. So, but I have also for many years just researched the food on my own and made it on my own. I do love to cook, and I like to cook things that are different and interesting. And so that's, yeah, it will be sort of a combination of my travels and my personal experiences and my research. And I think because I do have a PhD, I like am really obsessed with research, and you would even see that when you read my books. So, for example, in the Frankie Mysteries, if I mention a product or a food, I probably didn't make it up. It's probably real. And um, I will go much more into that, like I said, in the Pasta and Piazza mysteries. There'll be some sort of like famous site, some sort of not so famous site, and then food you know and food you don't know. And that's that's kind of the fun of writing to me is I love comedy, obviously. but I also want to be able to introduce people to things maybe they're not as familiar with about a specific place that I think are important to know. And Italians would totally agree with me that it's very important to know what they eat and what they don't eat because it's funny, they're very, very strict about it. And a great example I can give of this about this that people have said to me in Italy, you do not drink cappuccino from noon on. You do not. And in fact, even I would even say before noon. And that they consider it a breakfast drink and they're completely shocked. And I mean, I've met Italians who are actually shocked about the number of Americans that come in and request like a cappuccino or a latte or anything with milk just in the middle of the day. And because I can speak Italian, I've sometimes had to have way, way too many lengthy conversations with Italians about why this would happen and why I think it would happen. Another thing that happens is I will be at a restaurant and the waiters will ask me, why do Americans always order this when they come to Italy? Why do they, and I find myself explaining us a lot to them. Um, but when I look at the situation, somewhat objectively, it's more that they have very, very strict rules around eating that we just don't observe.
Yeah. I mean, if I was to go someplace like LA, I would imagine I could get cuisine from any place in the United States. And it sounds like they do not have that same sort of flexibility of food.
No, for many years, if I like they had a couple of oh God, this sounds terrible to say. It really does. But for many years, if there were just a few little Chinese restaurants like sprinkled here and there, and a lot of Italians, would tell me in all seriousness, like, oh, they eat cats. And I'm like, no, they don't. So there's a real strange reluctance in Italy to sort of move outside of Italian food. And what is super fun about traveling around Italy for me, I learned a lot of things about my father, who is still alive. Hi, Dad, if you're watching. I learned a lot of things actually about him just by going there that, he would not have ever been able to explain to me. But my dad I grew up, in West Texas, and then in Houston, and we ate Italian food and we ate steak. And those were the things that we ate. And that when I went to Italy and I saw how reluctant they were to try um, the restaurants that were largely there for the expat communities, within Italy. So, if you go into an Indian restaurant, for example, you will see a lot of people from India there, but almost no Italians or, maybe none. Um, and it's that sort of cultural reluctance to eat outside of their food comfort zone that is, I love all kinds of food. And so I'm just sort of baffled by why they don't. But I often think that I love, other people's cuisine so much because I did grow up in a house where I was expected sort of to only eat Italian food and steak, which was a very West Texas food that my
Mhm.
dad happily embraced. Not me. Not a big meat person.
Ah.
Just FYI.
Because you're such a meticulous researcher and you have so much knowledge about these places, can that be kind of a drawback? Because writing mystery, especially writing comedy, sometimes you got to bend the rules a little to make something funnier or more interesting. And
Yeah.
how do you balance that?
I find the funny in the real. So um, I'm trying to think of an example. Um, oh gosh, I wish I were better prepared to answer this question. Nothing is really coming to me, but I spend a lot of time when I research looking for something that could be hilarious that could really happen. So for example, I can think of something. Um, in the Italian culture, so when for going back to Campari Crimson, the Halloween vampire book, and how there's a community of vampires living in New Orleans, I thought it was like completely hilarious. A couple of things. One, that the largest population of people living as vampires is actually not New Orleans, but it's Baltimore.
I've heard that somewhere
Yeah.
weird.
No idea why. So, I mean, instant comedy, right? Baltimore and New Orleans. Like New Orleans, you can kind of see it that there's,
Right.
the voodoo, the like the this, the that, it just has that sort of vibe
Interview with
about
a
it. And
vampire.
also, yeah, Interview with the Vampire. By the way, I just actually I was in New Orleans the weekend before last at the 4 years delayed Anne Rice celebration of life at the Orpheum Theater. That was fascinating. But yeah, a lot of people came dressed as vampires to that event in some of the most amazing costumes I've seen. Um, or maybe they're real clothes. I don't know. But anyway, so something like that. But also, so the Twilight series sparked a lot of concern in Italy, and there was a call like for an increased number of exorcists in the Vatican and in the Italian Church, because they became concerned that things like Interview with a Vampire, but especially Twilight, made being a vampire attractive to people. And so there's this call, right, in the Catholic Church, and I worked this into the book, blah, blah, blah. But I was also able to work, I had seen a movie that like holy water will like burn a vampire as a kid. And I don't know where I saw this. I don't know what the movie was. So Frankie's a Sicilian nonna who is like quite a handful, quite a character. She had got filled a squirt gun with holy water in case like they met any vampires. So, again, trying to make real history or real occurrences funny, that's one way, like a squirt gun full of holy water, just silly things like that. But yeah, I find there's so much funny in real life stuff if you have if you look deeply enough, or in the case of New Orleans, I mean, it's not hard to look very far there for something funny that's real. It's just one of the reasons it's such a great location for a series, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you're hugely passionate about many aspects of writing. So, what do you find a struggle?
Right now, I find it a struggle to start a new series because, and I think so many writers say this, you write your first book in a series, and as excited as you are about it, by the time you get into the third, fourth, fifth book, the series has evolved a little bit. The characters have understandably grown a little bit. They've changed. Maybe you're more comfortable with who they are than you were in the first book. And so I always struggle with starting something new and have delayed this Italian series. Oh my gosh, my readers will tell you that I've been talking about this for years and haven't done it because it is so hard for me to kind of create that new world of characters and feel really comfortable with them when I start the book, comfortable enough to feel great about releasing the book, if that makes sense. That's always my struggle. It's really funny because so many writers I know do not have that problem. It seems sort of unique to me. Sometimes I don't believe that's true. I'm sure there are many others that struggle with starting a series, but I seem to really drag my feet on it, honestly. And so, we'll see how this comes out. I'm working on a free short story to sort of kick off the series now, and I'm hoping in that like that I can work out my issues before I really get deep into that actual book one. We'll see. We'll see.
Okay, now the book club members got, I believe it's his first two books in your Frankie Amato series. this month?
The first book, Limoncello Yellow, and then actually Braulio Brown is a short Thanksgiving novella that I wrote, I think it was last year. Yeah, it was
Okay.
last year, and it has to do with mermaids, and that's another great example of comedy in New Orleans, just actual real life comedy. There's an aquarium in New Orleans that does have mermaids come to the aquarium, and so that's the one I'm writing about. I think it's the Aquarium of the Americas. But they always bring mermaids in November for some strange reason. And there is also a cafe in the aquarium that makes food out of insects. And so they make a king cake, like for Mardi Gras, made out of, oh God, I think it's mealworms. And true story, Nicolas Cage is a huge fan and goes to the aquarium cafe to like get this king cake, and has a number of times. And so there's just so many hilarious things going on in the aquarium, that I was like, oh my God, I have to actually set a Thanksgiving like mealworm kind of type Thanksgiving meal. Do you know what I mean? At this aquarium and involve mermaids. And I know that sounds crazy, but I mean, honestly, like I said, when I'm writing this stuff, chances are I'm not making up a lot of it. Yes, the story is mine and made up, but the things that happen could actually happen in New Orleans and possibly have. So
So much of what you talked about today has made me so hungry, and that story did not. So just,
just
I'm gonna
killed it.
pass.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pass on the mealworm king
Oh
cake.
my gosh. Yeah, no, I think it's called the cafe. It's called Bug Appetit, which I think is hilarious.
Adorable.
It's hilarious, and lots of kids go there, and they have various things they make, but they actually post their recipes, and I have not made one, and will not, and I have not eaten there, but the next time I go, I just might. Who knows?
So to follow up on that, they enjoy your book. They want to, you would suggest continuing the series, and then where do they head next if they're enjoying your work? Your new series?
Yes. Like I said, I have a pre-order available for, I know most people say Capri, and I'm pronouncing it the Italian way, Capri, Cannoli, and Conspiracy. And that comes out in June, and I by the end of 2026, Rome, Ravioli, and Revenge will be out as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for meeting with me, Tracy. It's always a joy to absorb your energy and your enthusiasm.
Thanks so much, Nikki. I really appreciate that. It's been a blast. Ciao, y'all.
Bye.